this video, we will demonstrate how to use Trello to perform some basic functions of delegate management in support of the International Convention. We will discuss how to use Trello to represent delegate information on cards, how to check in and track delegates for arrivals, and how to manage the logistics of transporting delegates for excursions. One of the major advantages of Trello is the ability to access a shared set of information through multiple platforms and devices. Throughout the presentation, we will use the left side of the screen to show the system as it is accessed by a desktop through a web browser. On the right side of the screen, you will see the system as accessed by a smartphone. Trello does provide an app for both the iPhone and Android platforms. However, in this presentation, we will demonstrate the functions on an iPhone. We begin by accessing the Trello board through the application. When you click the Boards button, you will see a list of boards. One is for arrivals, and the other is for excursions. We will cover the use of boards later, but for now we will select arrivals and review one of the cards. The title of each card contains the delegate ID, the arriving flight, and the delegate's name. For the purposes of locating a card, it is most convenient to have this information as part of the card title, as you will see later on. The labels on the card contain information that will make it useful to filter lists of delegates for several purposes. In this case, we have a colored label for the hotel where each delegate will stay. The other labels identify the terminal where the delegate will arrive. Sky 1 through 4 indicate the terminals at the Sky Harbor Airport. There is also a label for each activity that has been scheduled for the delegate. This label contains a 4-digit date code followed by a 2-character activity code. The code may also contain a bus number for further planning. The description contains other useful information for delegate management. The due date has been coded to the arrival date and time. In this area, we can include the branch information, arrival and departure flights, gender, and email address. Although we have labels for the activities, we can also provide the full itinerary in the area below. Additional information such as languages may be placed on the card as necessary. Let's now review how to use Trello to manage delegate check-ins on arrival. It is important to note that the office support will have preloaded all of the information to the Trello board. From either the phone or the desktop, the volunteer will access Trello. You can use boards to set up delegate management functions for the day. By clicking on boards, you can see that we set up a board for excursions as well as arrivals. In this case, we will select arrivals. Once you are in a board, you can use lists to move cards from one status to the next. You will notice that moving a card from one list to the next will update the information for everyone. Let's assume that there is a hospitality team with the responsibility of greeting delegates from the gate, helping with luggage, and escorting delegates to hand off to the transportation team at a light rail. You could station volunteers at designated terminals to wait for delegates arriving on a particular flight. The volunteers could reference a roster of flights that would be arriving during their shift and prepare for those arrivals. From the application, the volunteer would search for the flight, and all delegates arriving on that flight will appear on the screen. One of the particularly useful features on the smartphone is the ability to track a flight from the delegate card. Clicking the link will allow the volunteer to preview the flight and get useful information on flight delays, connecting flights, and even baggage claim assignments. Let's now review the gate check-in procedure. As delegates arrive, the volunteer can greet the delegate. The database may be preloaded with delegate photos to make this process easier. Also, the volunteer may additionally attach a photo of the delegate to the card and update all other volunteers in the process with that information. This information can enhance the ability to recognize our brothers and sisters and warmly greet them. Additionally, this information can prove useful if we have trouble locating a delegate for any reason. If there are any special comments that need to be made or notifications of emergency situations, those can be placed in the comments. Any of the receiving teams down the line can comment or add to the notification to handle the problem. Now let's review the procedure of handing off the delegate from the hospitality team to a volunteer on the transportation team. In this case, the volunteers are responsible for escorting and directing the delegates to their hotel. The volunteer may be waiting for delegates at a particular terminal. In this case, they could filter their list by the terminal label. Notice that filtering by any criteria does not affect the view for any other user. As you can see, the volunteer can see which delegates are coming and where the delegates are going. Again, the check-in process involves moving the card from one list to the next, and the other views are updated. You can also see in the activity history who has checked in the delegate and when. The check-in process for the hotel follows a similar procedure. The hotel volunteers would filter the database by the hotel label. As delegates arrive, the desk can check people in by dragging them to the list. This final step would conclude the arrival process. At the end of the day, the office will move the list from the arrivals board to the excursions board to prepare for the next phase of delegate management. At the hotel desk, the volunteer will likely filter cards by their activity label to help check in groups of people to an activity. The volunteer should check in each individual by moving the card to the activity list for the day. A bus captain can filter the activity list by a bus number and will see the roster of only who is on that particular bus for the activity. When the delegates return from the activity, they can be checked in at the hotel by moving the card back to hotel check-in. Please keep in mind that these procedures are simply suggestions. Feel free to create other boards or lists or labels to best suit your own needs for taking care of delegates within your own city. This concludes the demonstration. Thank you for your attention.